Literally every Marvel Rivals rule has its exceptions, but in general these are the mistakes I find people make the most. Also, many of these themes span across multiple roles. Just because I mentioned it in one and not another doesn't mean it doesn't apply. As the tank player, the hero you pick is going to dictate how your entire team fights. Unfortunately, some maps are just incredibly hard to play certain heroes on. The example I will use is Groot on Royal Palace or Shin Shibuya, where there is a ton of high ground that Groot struggles to rotate to, and a lot of open sight lines for which Groot has very little counter besides chucking up a wall. You don't need to be good at every hero, but having the ability to swap to Venom, Magneto or Hulk on these maps will go a long way for your win rate. I find a lot of tank players also struggle to realise that their positioning directly affects the positioning of the rest of their team. Holding corners is typically one of the strongest positions you can take because it lets your supports play out of the line of sight of the enemy team while still allowing you to hold the front line. A big positioning mistake tanks often make is not understanding defenders' advantage, which is basically the fact that you get to dictate where and how fights take place when you're the defending team. Pushing through chokes on defense is an easy way to throw away defenders' advantage, especially if you have ranged DPS and supports who can't easily push through with you. As the tank, you are the head of the spear, the captain of the team. Because of this, you need to be aware of what is going on all over the map so that you can react accordingly. For example, if you're playing Venom and your healer is being focused, you don't necessarily need to turn and help, but you do need to recognise that you may not be getting healed whilst they try to force them out or kill them. Being aware is obviously important for all roles, but tanks are at the disadvantage of not being able to see the entire fight in front of them. Communication helps this greatly, but there are other ways to improve your awareness without having eyes in the back of your head. Tanks create space and opportunities for DPS to get kills. Their job is to make it feasible for DPS to get kills in the first place. They do this in different ways. Magneto and Doctor Strange have a giant shield for range attacks to stand behind and safely shoot at enemies. Hulk is similar since he's so beefy without having a shield. Venom and Cap dive the enemy backline and generally cause chaos, maybe getting a pick or at the very least draw attention to themselves to give the DPS an opening to get a kill or two whilst the enemy is distracted. Groot is a brawler who can get in close, making teammates harder to kill, and who excel when paired with DPS like Iron Fist or Black Panther. Next, we're looking at the Duelists, who are going for the highlight instead of fighting for the win. We're looking at you, Iron Fist. There's a misconception among new players that for a hero to win a team fight, it has to be a huge win. Often this leads to feast or famine ultimate usage, which can end up losing you more fights than if you were using your ults to get one or two key picks on supports, the tank, or an ulting enemy DPS. Losing your supports. Now this is a very common one. The number one job of a support is to stay alive. If they have to choose between overextending to heal you and playing their life and letting you die, they should choose the latter nearly every single time. Be aware of where your supports want to position and know when you're on your own. The most successful Duelist players find the way to maximise their damage and kills whilst minimising the amount of resources they need. At the end of the day, this game is still an arena shooter and the tools you may have learned in other games are still valuable, like playing around cover or taking safer angles. Obviously you can't avoid taking all damage, but if you are requiring a heal pocket to get things done, you're limiting the value supports can get elsewhere on the field, which leads me to my next point. Simply not dealing enough damage. When your tank throws themselves at an enemy and they turn their attention to deal with it, that's when you strike with your DPS and pick off vulnerable targets like healers and their DPS in whatever way it is that you do that. There's a fine line to walk between overcommitting and feeding and taking enough of a risk to make a play and get kills. In so many of my games when I play either tank or support, DPS is terrified to do anything. The whole tactical challenge of improving at DPS is about learning to make this risk calculation more accurately. If I make this play, even if I die, will that make it more likely that we win the game? The support role is not called healer. Every single hero in the role has a weapon that deals damage. You should always be looking to make offensive plays in between healing teammates. Remember, healing prolongs fights, kills win them. The challenge here comes down to learning how to balance dealing damage with your positioning. This is probably the biggest one and also the hardest to get good at. As I previously said, the number one job of a support is to stay alive. Unfortunately, the game is also designed in a way where killing you is very valuable. Learning how to position in a way where you are hard to get to while still being able to heal your teammates and potentially get angles on the enemy is probably the most important skill you can learn as a support. You shouldn't need a shield to survive against Iron Man. There are plenty of occasions where support players fail to recognise an advantage that the team should be pressing. Because of this, they stay in their safe position whilst their tank is pushing, causing them to lose the line of sight to heal. Scenarios like this are where support players need to feel the tempo of the fight and maintain line of sight to help their teammates press an advantage. You are often not in any danger in these scenarios, and if you are, you're still safer pressing with the team than getting driven far away from them. Supports are there to enable the tanks and DPS to do their jobs. They do this by healing, damage boosting, crowd controlling, buffing and debuffing, and generally getting kills off their own when circumstances permit. Support ultimates and even regular abilities have the most power to turn fights, which is why the rest of your team needs to support them to whatever degree possible while still getting their own job done. These next tips are general bonus ones that are going to help no matter what role you enjoy playing. First up, you've got to use sound cues. You can get so much knowledge in this game from the sound alone. You can know where the flankers are in your backline, you can hear where key abilities are being used, you can hear when enemy teams are pushing or when teammates are in danger. Sound cues can be a replacement for a lot of communication in this game. High ground advantage is right up there with defender's advantage. From high ground you are harder to hit whilst also having better angles for headshots and more escape routes. Fighting for high ground can be very valuable for your team, even if you're playing a hero that isn't directly advantaged from having the high ground. Marvel Rivals fights can change on a second to second basis. You need to learn how to change targets, positions, and be ready to react with abilities based off the flow of the fight. One of the best pieces of advice I can give for all roles is look at what your teammate is trying to accomplish. Did your Venom just dive the backline? Can you help him secure a kill? Do that. Is your Loki being harassed? Can you reasonably help? Then help. See your Punisher trying to shoot down Iron Man? Help him secure the kill. Marvel Rivals fights are won one elimination at a time and you're on a team. Focusing on helping your teammates do whatever they're trying to do is the #1 way to win more fights and more games. Oftentimes you see someone rushing to recontest whilst half of the team is walking back from spawn. No hero can 1v5 and it's still a team game. If you are a tank, make sure one of your supporters can heal you. If you are a DPS, then play safe and wait for your tank to engage. Remember, a team that fights together wins together. Flank when your tank engages and enemies are preoccupied. Always look around and see how many teammates are around you. There is strength in numbers. Just working on this alone with good placement is enough to get you to platinum in the competitive playlist. Ultimately though, don't forget to have fun. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself whilst playing video games. It shouldn't be enraging. Celebrate your successes, learn from your mistakes, mute toxic people, and take breaks when you need them. Feel free to add any tips or mistakes if you have them. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.